Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Ask For It podcast. Today, I have a special guest on. His name is John Bennett. He is the co-founder of Formidably, an AI strategy and advisory firm that helps leaders, teams, and organizations adopt AI without losing their judgment. He is also the podcast host of the AI Collider. John has spent years working at the intersection of technology, decision-making, and human thinking. Through Formidably, he advises companies on how to use AI as a collaborator, not an autopilot. And this is especially useful in high-stake environments where clarity, judgment, and responsibility still really matter. And most excitingly, he is the author of Don't Surrender Your Thinking, a timely and necessary book that pushes back on blind automation and AI hype. John argues that the real risk of AI isn't that it's smarter than us, it's that it's persuasive, confident, and fluent, even when it's wrong. And I'm sure we all have some sort of experience where we caught ChatGPT giving us an error. And the problem is that when we stop questioning it, we're quietly handing over our edge. So today we're going to talk about automation bias, the haha method, why fluent AI can erode critical thinking, and how the future doesn't belong to AI resistors or AI surrenders. It belongs to people who know how to think with AI, not through it. So thank you, John, so much for coming on to our podcast today to talk about your new book.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So today I just wanted to learn more about your book, more about yourself, and just kind of what was the inspiration behind it. So let's start off by understanding why did you feel the need to write this book and why today?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of noise around AI at the moment, and there's two broad responses. So one is to ignore it and hope it's going to go away, and I don't think that's going to happen. And the other is to sort of mindlessly accept it and just treat it like a vending machine. So the book tries to help people navigate, if you like, a third path and to understand what AI is so that they can benefit from it.
One thing about your book that really stood out to me was the term persuasion. You keep saying that the danger of AI is not AI in itself. It's the fact that it's persuasive. So can you talk a bit more about that as well?
Sure, and I think that goes to the heart really of understanding what AI is. So we use this term AI, artificial intelligence. So if we think about the intelligence part first, what actually is AI? And when I say that, of course, I'm talking about what we all use so much, which is the generative AI engines like Claude and ChatGPT. And what they are, they're pattern prediction machines. So they're trained on vast data sets to understand that if this particular piece of information occurs, then this piece of information is likely to be nearby. So, for example, they don't understand going out for a picnic and getting soaked. They don't understand that crops need water to grow. But they do understand that if the word rain is in a piece of text, then the word umbrella or forecast might be nearby. So, although we call them intelligent, they're not intelligent or have comprehension in the way that humans do. So that's kind of the one side of it. But they have this understanding, they have this pattern prediction, they'll put a word in. That's why we say they hallucinate sometimes, because sometimes they'll just put the wrong word in and they just get it completely wrong. But they do it in such a confident way and they're so fluent when they do it. That's where the persuasion comes in. So the general feel is that they're intelligent in the way that we are. They're not, but they're extremely persuasive in their answers. And I think that's where the danger is.
True. I'm just curious too, why do you think that's the way they built this systems? Like all the people coming up with ChatGPT and cloud and all that. Why the persuasion?
I think there's a number of things there. And I think one just is the way they're built and this training on vast data of communication, the websites, just naturally they're going to be persuasive because they've got inbuilt into them all the ways that we speak and actually more times when this word happens and this word happens after. So I just think there's just that fluency there, whether it's by design or just by default because of the way they're trained. I don't have access to that sort of information, but I think maybe that's what it is.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, because I've fallen victim to it a few times, especially when it comes to math. I'd put in and be like, can you give me this answer? And it comes so confidently, it's like, it's this. And then I'm like, I don't think so. And then it's always like, oh no, you're right. It's this. And it's wrong again. But you're right. It comes with that confidence. And I'm like, can you just take a moment and think? Like I would think. So you're right. It's just the way it goes in, and if someone doesn't question it, they're just going to grab that answer blindly and run with it.
That's so true,
Yeah.
and I really think that is the risk. I mean, I worry that people, let's say, fall into one or two camps, or even three camps if you like. Ignore it, mindlessly use it and accept it, or mindlessly use it and reject it because they can see that it's wrong. Rather than taking the time then to actually use it and develop it into a useful tool.
For sure. And that's why you wrote the book as well, right? To like kind of teach people that we shouldn't just mindlessly accept it and move forward with it as well.
Absolutely.
So do you see a lot in your world as well that people are just kind of taking the answers that's coming out and running with it and some mistakes that come from it? Like, do you see it
I,
happening a lot now, or are you seeing it more as like a future problem that could start to amplify and multiply?
I think it's there all the time. We see so many examples. Just today in the news in the UK, there was an example of a decision made by a police force, and they'd based it on they'd used AI to make the report, and it completely fabricated some facts.
Oh
And you just
no.
think this is just happening, and we see it on LinkedIn. There's this whole debate on LinkedIn about Chat GPT invented M dashes. We all know it didn't. I've got books on my bookshelf from 100 years ago that have got M dashes in, but as a British person, we don't use them in Britain. We don't use them at all. Or I say we don't. I'm sure there are people in Britain that use them, but in general writing, we don't use them. But of course, if somebody puts something into chat does use them a lot, and then they copy and paste that in and out, there's an M dash in there. It might not be a problem. I think if you want to use an M dash, you made a decision to use an M dash. Wonderful, they're great grammatical devices, but it's the mindless taking of an output and not thinking about it. It's there, day to day.
That's so true. I notice it all the time, and especially if I'm like searching someone's website and I see M dashes all over, I'm like, ChatGPT just wrote that for you, didn't it? And it's bad because you're right. Like when I look back at older books, there are M dashes. Like it was a normal use of like writing and that, but now it's like big telltale. Like you're
Mm.
using, yeah, that's such a true point. And with that too, I want to talk a bit about how we're outsourcing all of this to AI. So people are not no longer writing their own website content, or I'm even worried about books sometimes too. Like, are they using ChatGPT, or even just when it comes to like people's output for work? So I want your take on that. Do you think we're over outsourcing our own thinking with it, or is it more of an efficiency factor?
I think for me, the fundamental thing is a decision to outsource or not to outsource or how much to outsource. So, although, I kind of, what I'm selling is a method of critical thinking and using human intent, human intervention, human judgment, there's flexibility there. And for sure, there's tasks where you don't need as much human intent or you don't have to intervene so much. So, you can use a lower intensity of these things. But for me, I think it always starts with that conscious decision of, what is the task that I'm working on? And what's the appropriate amount of human intervention, human intent, human judgment that I need for that task?
True. And that kind of goes into your haha method, right? The first one is about that human judgment and intent behind it. So let's talk a bit about that if you're open to sharing the full method as well.
Sure, sure. So, yeah, the idea with the method is that, you have to start with the human element, you have to involve the human element throughout, and most importantly, you have to have human judgment at the end. So, the easiest way to explain that last step is taking accountability. This piece of work, if I use this piece of work as it is, am I prepared to stake my reputation, stake my career on that piece of work?
Mm.
So, yeah, that's that human element. So you start with human intent. You clearly define what the task is. You must treat the what the AI comes up with as a draft. So many people take the first thing that AI comes with and they either go, yes, I'll use that, or no, I'm not using that. I reject it. It's just a draft though. So then you use human intervention to have a conversation, have some dialogue back and forwards, use your expertise and knowledge to get the AI to revise it. You might revise bits yourself. And then eventually you get to a piece of work that you say, yes, I am going to take responsibility for that. So that's the HAHA method basically in a nutshell.
I love that. And I love that you start and end with human because in the end we need to use AI as like a tool to enhance us, right? Not to like replace it. And like you said, like with the police, right? Like they released it and no one checked. And I'm sure that happens all the time in like big corporations and all that, where leaders are fully relying on this. Do you have an example or anything like that where you would apply the haha method for like your own work or for maybe just any other, like any corporate leader? Like, how would you suggest that they apply it?
So, just for fun, I would suggest that we take something from your last episode. So, I was listening to an episode, and you had it was why cold outreach fails, and you
Yeah.
had this wonderful example of sending a restaurant sending emails. So I was thinking, oh, what kind of example could I give? And I thought, let's use that one because
Okay, I
it's
love that.
maybe fresh, and so if you take perhaps the non-haha method approach first, you might go into AI and say something along the lines of, I want to write an email promoting my restaurant. It could be that simple.
Yeah.
Um, there's very low human intent in that. It's leaving so much to the AI to decide. Whereas, and what you described in the last episode, it was almost like the definition of human intent. So you said, okay, you defined the persona, the ICP. So let's say, using your example, it's to students at the local high school who might go to the restaurant. Okay, so we're saying to the AI, okay, I'm a restaurant, I'm this kind of restaurant, and I'm writing an email to this customer, and these are the key sort of benefits or offers that I'd like to promote to them. And this is for an email, and I want the tone to be friendly. So, in other words, you're building up rather than just going very simply, give me an email for my restaurant. You're building up all those stages and you're making a very clear human intent. And the more time you spend on human intent, a lot of times, the less time you've got to spend on revision later on. So, AI will now go and do a draft, and it's going to come back with something, and then we're going to look at it in the mindset of, okay, well, we know who our ICP is, our persona. This is for the student, and we wanted to promote the fast food and how quick it is, and that we've got these deals on. Has it done that? Is it in the right tone? So the human intervention stage, you're using your knowledge and your understanding of context to check what the AI has done, and to apply that lens to it. And then you'll make some suggestions. You want to be really specific in that. So, saying something like, "Oh no, that's no good. Make it better." That's not really human intervention. You could say, "Okay, well, I noticed that you have not mentioned the fact that all meals are delivered within 30 minutes, and also the tone you've taken isn't the right tone for our ideal customer. Can you make it more friendly, or can you, use shorter sentences, or being really specific in that feedback?" And then AI will go and do a revision. Now, although we do the method as haha, you can loop through that stage as many times as you want. So AI will come back out with something. You might make some more feedback. You might actually just amend it. So you might go, okay, I've gone as far as I can with AI. I'm gonna change that one sentence myself. I'm gonna reorder the sentences. And then eventually you get to human judgment. And as I mentioned earlier, that is am I prepared to take responsibility for this piece of work? If I send this email, am I prepared to accept the portrayal of my brand that gives? Am I prepared to, deal with any consequences? So in a nutshell, that's the method.
Wow, no, that's incredible. And like, I'm just like mind blown a little bit as well because I love the idea that you said at the end. It's like, would I like stake my reputation on this email? And I think that's so key. And I think a lot of people are missing, even myself personally. And even the idea of giving it like proper prompts. Like when you were explaining it to me, it made me like remember like when we used to give people briefs to be like, okay, can you go write me this, like a content writer or someone putting together slides? Like if I were to outsource email writing, that's exactly what I would tell somebody. And I would want to minimize revisions because they charge for revisions. So it was just like a great reminder to me that we need to treat AI like an assistant or like an outsourced contractor. And then in the end, of course, it's still you outputting the work. So I think that was really brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you, John.
You're right.
And yeah, and I'm curious, how long did it take you to come up with this framework? It feels extremely foolproof. Like the way you just walked me through it, I was like, yeah, like of course I need to apply this today. So I'm like already going to start taking notes on this.
So I mean, like a lot of good things, it really came from somebody seeded the idea to me that you need your own framework that you can refer to, and it came to me on a walk. So, so obviously we already have human in the loop is it already exists, but the problem with human in the loop is that it's saying that the human should stay in the loop, and it's implying that the machine should have control of the process. And I think that's the critical thing for me is that when you're working with AI, it's got to start with the human, it's got to end with the human, and the human has to intervene in the middle. And I think just over the course of this walk, I came up with the idea of haha, and then developed it from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I get most of my ideas on walks. So I love that. And then with that as well, so do you think right now, if people don't apply this framework and we're just relying on AI, are we becoming lazier? Like in just your opinion. I feel like that's a really blunt thing to say, but just out of your like professional opinion, do you think that's what's happening? Because I do see that if we start to apply the haha method, we're going to be start bringing back our own critical thinking skills. And so we're using AI to enhance ourselves. But the way people are right now, like even you mentioned, people just say make it better. And I fall in victim to that all the time. I always start screaming at ChatGPT, being like, "Are you kidding?" But it's like it can't read my mind, right? But I'm expecting this output. So just curious on where you see humans are kind of going with their thinking.
I think in both directions
Yeah.
is my honest answer. AI is an amplifier, so if we are prepared to think, it can amplify our abilities. If we just want to cut corners and save time, it's going to amplify that as well. So it's down to a choice. But I think there's a real risk that if we make the wrong choice, if we let AI do the thinking for us, we could start to lose that ability. And over time, we're going to find it harder to think critically. The example I give there is, years ago when we were going on a journey, we used to have to use maps, and of course, you couldn't look at the map while you're driving, so you'd look at the map and you'd plot a route, and then you'd have to remember, okay, well, when I get to this intersection, I'm going to take that road.
Mm.
I mean, I've not done that for years. Now my watch will vibrate when I get to a junction, and if it's three vibrations, I know I'm going left. If it's five, I'm going right. You know, how would I cope if I had to look at a map again? And that's
So
my concern. If we let AI effectively be sat nav for thinking, those skills are just going to kind of decline over time.
that's so true. Yeah, I was thinking back, like when I was younger, my parents used to download MapQuest. Like they used to like print out the map. And now I think back and I'm like, how would I get anywhere? Like I can't get home half the time. I need Google Maps. But you're right. I guess those kind of skills decrease, but then others would increase in different ways, I guess, to open up our capacity. So one of my questions to you on that as well is that as AI improves, what skills do you think we need to focus on improving? Because certain things like email writing or grammar, like those things are being taken off our plate now.
Yeah, I think there's probably three things that we could focus on, and one of those is seeing what is missing. So if we're using AI, what is it that it hasn't taken into consideration? What assumptions has it made? I think the other thing that we need to do is we need to question. We need to question where others just accept. So you're building that curiosity, that thinking mindset and it's similar to the first point, but one is seeing what's missing, the other is questioning things. And then I think the third thing is applying context. So as the models get more and more powerful, they will have more information. I don't think they'll ever be able to apply that into the context of real life. So
True.
I think those sort of skills are really important. It still comes back down to the critical thinking basically, and skepticism. I call it productive skepticism. So not just completely rejecting AI or its outputs, being open to how amazingly powerful they can be, but applying critical thinking.
That's so true. And I like the way you said about putting into real life context. For example, a lot of my listeners probably use a lot of role play tools with AI for looking for jobs or for practicing their sales skills. And there's amazing tools out there. Like I used one recently to help train some sellers where you put in your persona that you're trying to sell to and you cold call them. And like it's an AI bot and it hung up on me at one point as well. So you practice like getting past him as like a gatekeeper. But you're right, because in the end, it's like you can practice that all you want. But the moment you get on a call with a real human, you can't predict the way that person's going to react. And so in the end, you have to take the skills that you learn and apply it into real life context, regardless. So that's a really good key feature there as well. And I think a lot of the listeners should probably take that back with them. And with that as well, so with a lot of people looking for jobs and all that, I know there's a lot of fear around AI taking away jobs. So curious on your take on that as well. Like, do you see that becoming a big risk in the future? Or do you think that as long as we all start to shift our mindset and start to adapt to AI in a different way, that we should all be safe in that sense?
I think what you just said there is the critical point, isn't it? Some jobs will disappear 100%, but also other jobs will appear. I was thinking about this on a walk actually yesterday, and the comparison between previous technology. I mean, you think about when industrial looms were invented. Yeah, it affected the jobs of people that were sewing. The difference between that and this is that to buy an industrial loom was incredibly expensive. So, the people who were being displaced by this technological change didn't really have an opportunity to get the materials or buy their own loom, for example. Whereas with AI, jobs are being displaced, and yet almost everybody has access to the thing that's replacing them. So I think as long as we stay curious, as long as we really understand what AI is, how it works, what it's good at, and where we still excel, then hopefully we can apply those things, and if the job that we're doing disappears, find work elsewhere because we've understood, that niche that humans can operate in.
That's so true. And I guess looking back now, it's like I would never imagine having to use a loom. You know what I mean? Like we've come so far past it, but I'm sure at the time it impacted somebody's livelihood and job. So you're right. I guess it's just that iteration of as society grows and we all progress and get better at different skills. That's just something that's going to happen inevitably.
Hmm.
And with that too, so I actually attended a roundtable recently where we were talking about adoption of AI and how a lot of our nations today are actually behind in AI adoption. So I'm based in Toronto, so it was mostly between like Canada and US that way. So I'm not sure if the UK is a little bit better off than we are. I'm not a huge AI expert on it, but I wanted to get your take as well on skepticism by corporations. I know a lot of people were just using AI as an efficiency tool versus an innovation tool. What's your advice to leaders out there on how they can balance their own skepticism or their team skepticism while also trying to stay innovative and ahead of the game?
It's a really interesting question because I think the answer lies in the answer that we have for using AI ourselves. It's understanding what it is, not rushing into an AI program, but also having a strategy. So, in a lot of businesses, people are using AI themselves. So, in other words, somebody working in the business will have their own account and they'll start to do things in AI without it being an initiative by the business. So, I think you have to have a strategy. You have to understand it. You have to be open-minded, but you also have to be skeptical. And I think leaders need to do that. They need to start small,
Okay.
work out where it can work for the business, and develop something that adds value.
Okay, I like that. Can we talk more about how to like show the value? Because I know a lot of organizations are rolling out so many AI tools. And I know there's a lot of mistakes behind adoption for that as well. You mentioned starting small. Could you kind of walk us through how you would advise like a leader on how to make sure the team can adopt those AI tools in a way that like manages that skepticism but still brings that value?
100%. I mean, you have to show the value. So I've seen both. I've seen big rollouts of AI where that value hasn't been demonstrated, and then you end up with reluctance. You end up with fear because people think, well, is this being rolled out because they're trying to get efficiencies and my job's at risk? So I think that's a really bad way of doing it. that big launch, if you like, dictating the way AI is going to be used. For me, the approach I always recommend is to start small, find a project where it can truly add value, but do that in conjunction with the team. So let the team be involved in how you shape the project, how the value is created, because at the end of the day, they understand their role better than anybody else will understand it. And get something that is successful, get something that adds value and that saves the team time. Once you've done that, they'll become ambassadors for the change. And then at that point, then you can do bigger projects, do workshops. But you need to, as I say, get that kind of pilot project done in conjunction with a team that builds early success and builds ambassadors.
I think that's so timely because I work with a lot of sales leaders and they're always switching AI tools for their outreach. They're always switching between like HubSpot and Salesforce or Apollo and like outreach. And it's hard for the teams. But you're right. I like that you said like involve the team. So I think that's a huge takeaway for all the listeners as well. It's like bring your team in early, hear their feedback and have them part of it. Because I like how you said like they'll turn into ambassadors for it and then help with the adoption of it. So that's amazing advice, John. Thank you. All right. So John, we are nearing the end of our time. But before we leave off, what's one thing that you want to tell all the listeners that they can really take away from your book?
I think maybe not so much from my book, but just from all the things we've spoken about. And that is that those human qualities that we have, our ability to understand context, our creativity. I don't think we've talked about that yet, but AI, or certainly current AI, because of its pattern prediction sort of basis, can't be genuinely creative. It can remix the already known, but we have the ability to be creative and to take something from one field and merge it with another field and come up with something completely new. So that's a fundamental human trait. So you've got contextual awareness, you've got our creativity, our emotional intelligence. All those things, I think, will become more important as AI grows rather than less important. So I think in all the worry, and it's totally understandable that people are worried about AI. I've been an entrepreneur for 37 years. I've seen e-commerce come. I've seen social media come. This is the biggest change I've seen in all those years. So it's totally understandable that people are concerned by it. But I think just come back to that understanding that our unique human traits are going to get more important, not less, and maybe take some solace in that and use that as your guide to the approach you take.
I love that. And honestly, that just feels so inspiring because it feels like just the way I kind of took that advice right now was that AI can free up my space to be more creative and to be able to hone in on my emotional intelligence as well. Because sometimes like creativity gets killed down by the amount of admin burden that we're doing. And sometimes I get stuck like on emails and drafts and I'm like, I want to think of strategy and I want to think of these different things. So or even like right now, the podcast, like Riverside's taking off most of the editing, right? So it's like I can open up my time to think more about questions to ask you and like reading your book and understanding better. So you're right. I love that advice. That's amazing.
I think you're absolutely right. I think, used right, AI will give us more time to do the bits that are fun and enjoyable. And I also hope that if it does give us more time, we might just take a tiny bit of that and use it for more face-to-face interaction and just more being with people. And maybe that's another way that we can kind of adapt in the age of AI.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing advice. And I feel like we left that on such a great note. So John, thank you so much for coming on. And if somebody wants to purchase your book, where could they find that?
So my book is on all the major online sellers. Or if you can't find it, my website is formidably.com. So you can find out more there.
Awesome. And if someone wants to follow you, what's the best place to connect?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Perfect. All right. So listeners, thank you so much. Follow John Bennett on LinkedIn and don't forget to purchase his book, Don't Surrender Your Thinking. And until next time, please don't forget to keep asking for it. Thank you for listening to Ask For It. If this episode was helpful, I'd love if you subscribed and shared it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready for a bit more support, I do offer one-on-one coaching. The link's in the show notes if you want to check that out. Until next time, keep showing up and don't forget to ask for it.